Okay, so first thing we're going to do today is multiply conjugates. Now, good news is that we've already done this. We've already dealt with conjugates. So hopefully we all remember what a conjugate is. And if you didn't, I've written it on the board. Conjugate is a binomial where the numbers are the same, but only the signs are different to protect the innocent. So there I have a pair of conjugates. 5 minus the square root of 7 and 5 plus the square root of 7. Now, you can multiply these the same way that we multiply any other pair of binomials, and that's to use the FOIL method. So I'm going to go through the FOIL method with you, and then we're going to go over a way that is simpler and easier. So let's FOIL this. So the first terms, 5 times 5 is 25. Outer terms, 5 times the square root of 7. Inner terms, negative 5 times the square root of 7. And then my last term, negative square root of 7 times positive square root of 7 gives me the negative of the square root of 49, but the square root of 49 is 7. Now, when I go to combine like terms, I combine my number with my number. 25 minus 7 gives me 18. But what happens to my two terms in the middle when I go to combine them? They cancel each other out, leaving with just 18 as my answer. And that fact about conjugates is what makes multiplying them easier and simpler than other binomials where we have to FOIL.
Wait, so you're not FOIling?
We're not going to FOIL. I'm going to show you another way to do it. That was to illustrate you can get the answer by FOIling. If you like FOIling, by all means, continue to FOIL. However, this is fewer steps, easier to understand, I think, and my mantra is fewer steps means fewer chances to make a mistake. Okay, so the way we multiply two conjugates, step number 1, we multiply the two numbers. What's the matter? Oh, could you guys maybe move your desks over like half a foot? Okay, you didn't know. You don't have to apologize. You didn't do it on purpose. I was doing it on purpose. See, I feel like this. Can you see now? Okay, so we multiply the number by the number. And we multiply the square root times the square root. Notice I'm not worried about the sign. I just multiply the root by the root. Square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is the square root of 49, but the square root of 49 is just 7. And that's a little shortcut you can take. When you're multiplying a square root by itself, your answer is just the value that was inside the square root sign. Step number 3 is to simply subtract the second number from the first number, and that's your answer. You see, we got the same answer by FOIling as we did by multiplying the conjugate. But this is 4 steps, and this is really 2 steps. Yes? Yeah, don't worry about that. These are the two places you haven't done. I got 7. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Is anybody not done copying this down? Thing that we're going to talk about, which is rationalizing the denominator. Rationalizing the denominator is something that we've already done. So hopefully this won't look too terrible to you. Okay, I have written the steps down at the bottom of the page, so you can write them down and follow along as we go through this problem. So here's my fraction that I want to rationalize. I want to get rid of the square roots in the denominator. So step number 1 is to multiply the denominator by its conjugate. So what is the conjugate of square root of 5 minus square root of 2?
Square root of 5 plus
Square root of 5 plus square root of 2. Remember, conjugate, same numbers, opposite sign. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to write the conjugate in the numerator. In other words, whatever you write in the denominator, you're going to write in the numerator. Anyone remember why we do that? What am I dividing by here?
itself, so it cancels each
If I were to actually divide this, what number would I get?
other out. 1.
I'd get 1. So I'm really only multiplying by 1, which doesn't change the underlying value. All it does is change the form, which I'm allowed to do. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3 is to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. Being the lazy person that I am, I start with whichever is easier. And for me, the easier is the denominator because if I know about the nature of conjugates. So what's my operation? The square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. And then in the middle goes a minus sign. The numerator is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to multiply this. I'm going to distribute. I'm going to distribute 3 times the square root of 2 over the square root of 5 plus the square root of 2. So 3 times the square root of 5. I multiply the number by the number. In this case, my number happens to be 1. So it's really 3 times 1, which is 3. The square root of 2 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 10. Again, we do it again. Square root of 3, this is 1 square root of 2. So 3 times 1 gives me 3. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 gives me the square root of 4, which is, somebody said it, 2. So this gives me 3 times 2. So that's step number 3. Multiply the numerator and the denominator. The last step is to simplify. So I'm going to start, here I'm going to start with the numerator. So I have 3 times the square root of 10 plus 3 times 2, which is 6. So I have 3 square root of 10 plus 6. Divided by 5, take away 2, which is 3. But what do I notice? You notice I have 3's and multiples of 3 in both my numerator and the denominator, so I can simplify. Now, what you need to remember is that even though there's 2 numbers in the numerator here, and only 1 number in the denominator, you can recycle this denominator. In other words, not only can you simplify it with the first 3, you can also simplify it with the 6. So all we're going to do is simplify twice. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I can cancel out my 3's. And that leaves me with just 1 square root of 10.
Plus 2.
And then I have 6 divided by 3. That's right, Jillian. 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. And that is my final answer.
Where did you get 6 from?
The 6 comes from 3 times, well, first I did 3, and then I did the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is 2. So then I have 3 times 2, and that makes 6. forget the negative sign. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. Square root of 4, which is 2, and then put the negative sign in. Okay, when you're multiplying the conjugate, ignore the minus sign when you're multiplying, and then just put it in before you subtract. Laura?
I just am confused on the whole thing. Like, are you supposed to?
I'll come over and help you when we're doing the problem, and the rest of the class is working on this. Yes, sir?
What about the numerator? I don't get how you got the 3, 4, and 2. Well, I don't get, ignore the 2, I know how you got the 2, but I don't get how you got the 3 and 4. I know how you got the 3 and the 10.
I'm a little confused as to what you're saying.
Okay, so how do you get
So there's three things here.
up,
Here.
Yes, I understand how you got 3 and square
You
root of
understand how we got this?
Yes, but how did you get the 3 and square root of 4?
3 times 1. And then square root of 2 times square root of 2.
That's what I had my question.
Oh, so you put a 1 there.
I put a 1 there because now I'm multiplying a number times a number. So it's that you understand, even though there's no number here, there's a 1.
Right.
So you're multiplying the number times the number and the root times the root. In reality, since all you have is a number here, you just move the 3 over. You don't actually have to multiply.
Okay, I get it now.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, so please try that problem. Okay, conjugate is
3, square root of 3 plus square root of 5.
square root of 3 plus square root of 5.
Then you put
Square root of 3 plus square root of 5.
then
Now we're going to multiply. This gives me 3.
minus 5.
3 minus 5 on the top. This gives me 2 times the square root of 21. And then 2 times the square root of 35.
That's better.
Okay, now we're going to simplify. Well, I can't simplify the top, Josue, because the radicands are different.
So you can simplify the
So I have 2 times the square root of 21 plus 2 times the square root of 35 in the numerator. 3 take away 5 is
negative 2.
-2. Now, notice, what number is common to both the numerator and the denominator? 2. So I can divide everything by, not 2, negative dose. So 2 divided by -2 gives me 2 divided by -2. Stop.
Negative 1.
-1. So I cancel these out and I put -1.
Divide.
I could do the same thing here. 2 divided by -2. Cancel, cross them out, put -1. Now I'm going to rewrite my answer. Well, I have the negative square root of 21 minus the square root of 35. Technically, it's the negative square root of 21 plus the negative of square root of 35, but we don't write that. If we have plus or minus, we just write minus. This is my answer.
Yay.
Okay, are there any questions about this problem?